I'd like to real quick share a story from my childhood, and at the end of it, I think a lot of you are going to have one of those epiphany moments. One year for Christmas, my dad got me a really nice football. Now, I had two or three of them laying around that were cheap and kind of out of shape. This was a really good one. And I was so excited. And the following spring, I'm out and playing with it. And we were in kind of a suburban looking house that was surrounded by farm fields when I was a kid. And it accidentally ended up over in this field on the other side of a barbed wire fence. I was kicking it around. And sure enough, one of these things was over there. And it was far enough inside the fence that I couldn't just reach in and grab it. I would have had to literally climb into the field. Every time I tried to approach that fence where this thing was, it would start walking toward me. And I was just a kid at the time, and I was terrified of it. I really had no issue with cows, but this thing was different. It would just stare. And that football sat over there for 3, 4, 5 days in the rain. And one day I was out playing with some of my older ones, and my dad asked me where my new one was. And I explained the situation, and annoyed, he told me to go get it. And I said, I don't think I can. This thing's going to kill me if I go over there. He's like, it's not going to kill you. Go get your football. And still, I think I was like 10, maybe 11 years old. And so I couldn't bring myself to do it. And so, even more annoyed, my dad walked over to the fence where this thing was, and it started walking toward him. And he walks right through the fence, and I'm trying to warn my dad, and he's just rolling his eyes. And he walks over to the football, picks it up. This thing's still walking toward him, and he looks at it, and the thing stops. And he says, beat it. And he takes 2 steps towards the thing, and it bolts. And I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. And my dad comes back, and I'm like, how do you do that? How did you do that? And he's like, where do you think we get the term bully from? All you have to ever do is hit a bully once in the mouth, and they'll go away. And that's when I had this moment. I'm like, oh, wow, that's where we get the term bully. That's what our government is doing right now. It is bullying the American people. And there's a new form of it now in Florida. And Mr. DeSantis, I know you haven't closed the beaches, and I know you've been under a lot of pressure to. A lot of localities have closed the beaches, different cities, which is fine, because those cities have a different dynamic. Those beaches are actually revenue drivers. But Mr. DeSantis, if what I'm reading in this article about what you said is true, I would highly suggest you rethink your attitude on this. Because you're going to be reminded that you are governor and live in a state full of veterans who have sacrificed greatly for the Constitution of this nation, for our freedoms, and for the freedom of everyone. Before anyone gets too confused, let me tell you what I'm talking about. He's talking about having the authorities separate even 2 people that are closer than 6 feet. And if you think I'm kidding, here it is. And I'm going to read the entire statement here so nobody can accuse me of taking anything out of context. Quote, from Mr. DeSantis, we didn't order no gatherings on beaches 10 or more, so what you've seen now is a lot of sheriff's departments have instituted protocols. I had the Brevard sheriff, he had his deputies on ATVs, they had a boat going down the coast, and they're telling people you've got to disperse. Cocoa Beach, major spring break destination, went down 70% since his order. Okay. And so I think that's a more prudent approach to do social distancing. I just spoke to the U.S. Surgeon General about it. Here's the thing. They want you to social distance, of course, but they actually encourage people to get fresh air. They just don't want you congregating in big groups. And so if you have a Floridian that goes and walks their dog like a married couple on the beach, as long as you're not within 6 feet of each other, they view that as a healthy thing. So let me be very clear about my understanding of that. If any of your sheriffs or any of your deputies or any of your underlings approach some old married couple holding hands on the beach, there's going to be problems. There's going to be problems, Mr. DeSantis. I promise you. That is completely beyond your scope. You are still a servant of the people, as are all government officials, and your job is to preserve and to defend the Constitution of the United States. You know what that Constitution of the United States says? It has a thing called a Bill of Rights. And the First Amendment says that we have the right to peaceably assemble. We have the right to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this is the oath that you swore that you would defend. Not that you would help keep us from getting a cold. You swore an oath. All of you did. As did we, as servicemen. And we're about fed up at this point. To be very truthful, it is an overblown bunch of bullshit and nonsense. There are soldiers coming back from the Middle East right now who are being treated worse than prisoners at Leavenworth, in isolation and in quarantine. That needs to end. And before I get out of this video, I would like to issue a quick correction, and I'm going to state the conditions upon which I will apologize for all of these previous videos if I'm wrong. Now, I had stated a correction that there were 60 million deaths. That was incorrect with H1N1. I was looking at a lot of different numbers and transposed a couple of them. I'm just going to go ahead and read this so that I can be on the record with the actual facts from the CDC. This is cdc.gov, flu/pandemic H1N1 2009. All right, U.S. numbers and worldwide numbers. After the peak of the illness during the second wave had come and gone in the United States, from April 12, 2009 to April 10, 2010, CDC estimated there were 60.8 million cases. 60.8 million cases. The range was anywhere from 43.3 to 89.3. 274,304 hospitalizations, with a range of 195 to 402,000, and 12,469 deaths. That's here in the United States. Now, worldwide, CDC estimated 151,000 to 575,000 people worldwide died. Minimum, low number of deaths, 2009, 2010, 151,000 people in a calendar year died. In that same video where I made the mistake, I did the numbers for 3 4-month periods, starting back in November when this started. November to now for the next 4 months, and then the 4 months after that, that would constitute a year. If the deaths doubled every 4 months, we would not even be half of what the low estimate is of what happened in 2009 and 10. Not even close. This isn't even close. And worse, globally, 80% of H1N1 virus-related deaths were estimated to have occurred in people younger than 65 years of age. That means it hit the young. Now, where are our numbers currently? This number up here in gray is a ridiculous number. I don't think it's even worth talking about anymore because it includes too many healthy people, meaning 90,000. So currently infected, 172,000 in 4 months. 164,000 of those 172 are 99.9% likely to recover. Only 7,800 people in critical condition, only 11,000 deaths in 4 months. So if we have 11,000 deaths now, first 4 months, next 4 months it doubles, that'll be 22. The following 4 months, if it doubles again, that's 44. So that's real easy. That's 77,000 deaths in a year, assuming exponential growth from this point forward. 77,000. The low estimate for what happened in 2009 is 151,000, meaning it's more than likely very much higher than that. Anywhere from 151 to 575,000. So if you split the difference, probably somewhere around 300,000 people died. Died, not cases, died. So, my new standard is this. I will apologize on a planet of 7.7 billion people. 7.7 billion people. 770 million is 10%, right? 77 million is 1%. 7.7 million people. If 7.7 million people, meaning anyone other than 99.9% of the population, when the numbers reach 7.7 million cases, that means currently infected 7.7 million around the planet, I'll apologize. I will admit that it is something serious and we should look at it and take it seriously. When the amount of cases, that's just cases, not deaths, cases of people currently infected, not healthy people, reaches 7.7 million. That represents 0.1% of the population. I think that's very fair. I think that's very generous. Given that if you had a military unit that had 10,000 people in it, what would represent 0.1%? Well, let's see, 10,000. 1,000 is 10%. 100 is 1%. If you had 10 people sick, if you had a military unit of 10,000 people and you had 10 people sick, that would be 0.1%. That's how ridiculous the story is right now, because the numbers we currently have aren't anywhere near there. Basically, when this number that says 172,000, when that reaches 7 million, 7.7, then I'll apologize. Until then, all we are doing is giving in to a bully. And we all know how that works out. Like, share, subscribe.